श्रीराघवं दशरथात्मजमप्रमेयम् सीतापतिं रघुकुलान्मयरत्नदीपम् आजानुबाहुं अरविन्ददलायताक्षम् रामम् निशाचर विनाशकरम् नमामि नमामि नमामि
Ramakatha Rasavahini. Chapter 2, Part 1, The Imperial Line. In the immaculate, pure solar dynasty was born the highly mighty, the far-famed, the strong-armed, the intensely loved and revered ruler, Khatwanga. His rule showered supreme bliss on the immense population under his throne and persuaded them to pay homage to him as if he were himself God. He had a one and only son named Dilipa. He grew up shining in the glory of knowledge and virtue. He shared with his father the joy and privilege of guarding and guiding the people. He moved among his subjects, eager to know their joys and sorrows, anxious to discover how best to relieve pain and distress, intent on their welfare and prosperity. The father watched his son grow, straight and strong, virtuous and wise. He sought a bride for him, so that after the marriage, he could place on his shoulders part of the burden of the scepter. He sought her in royal houses far and wide, for she must be a worthy companion for the prince. At last, the choice fell on the Magadhan princess, Sudakshina. The wedding was celebrated with unsurpassed pomp and exultation by the people of the court. Sudakshina was endowed with all womanly virtues in ample measure. She was saintly and simple, and a sincere votary of her husband. She served her lord and poured love on him, as if he were her very breath. She walked in the footsteps of her husband and never deviated from the path of righteousness. Dilipa too was the very embodiment of righteousness, and as a consequence, he saw that neither want nor disappointment affected him in the least. He held fast to the ideals and practices of his father, so far as the administration of the empire was concerned, and so he could slowly and without any dislocation take upon himself the full responsibility of administration. Thus he was able to give his father rest in his old age. Khatwanga rejoiced within himself, contemplating the great qualities of his son and observing his skill, efficiency, and practical wisdom. Some years passed thus. Then Katwanga directed the court astrologers to seek an auspicious day and hour for the coronation of Dilipa, and on the day fixed by them he installed Dilipa as the monarch of the realm. From that day, Dilipa shone forth as the lord and sovereign of the empire, which stretched from sea to sea, with the 7 islands of the ocean. His rule was so just and compassionate, so much in conformity with the injunctions laid down in the scriptures, that rains came as plentiful as needed, and the harvest was rich and profuse. The entire empire was green and glorious, festive and full. The land was resonant with the sacred sound of the Vedas recited in every village. The purifying rhythm of the mantras chanted in the Vedic sacrifices performed throughout the land. Every community lived in concord with all the rest. Nevertheless, the Maharaja was apparently overcome by some mysterious anxiety. His face was losing effulgence. The lapse of a few years did not improve matters. Despair wrote its deep lines firmer on his brow. One day, he revealed the cause of his gloom to his queen, Sudakshina. Darling, we have no children, and sadness is overpowering me as a consequence. I am even more affected when I realize that this Ikshvaku dynasty will terminate with me. Some sin which I committed must have brought about this calamity. I am unable to decide the process by which I can counter this malign destiny. I am eager to learn from our family preceptor, the sage Vasishta, the means by which I can win the grace of God and make amends for this sin. I am very much agitated by grief. What do you suggest as the best means to win grace? Sudakshina did not take time even to think out the answer. Lord, the same fear had entered my mind too and caused me much grief. I had not given expression to it. I smothered it in the mind, for I cannot, I know, reveal my fears without being prompted by you, my Lord. I am ever willing and eager to support and follow implicitly what appeals to you as the best means of overcoming our sorrow. Why should there be any delay? Let us hasten to consult revered Vasishta. Dilipa ordered the chariot to be brought for the pilgrimage to the hermitage of the preceptor. He directed that no escort or courtier need accompany him that day. In fact, he drove the vehicle himself and reached the simple cottage of his Gurudev. At the sound of the chariot, the hermits on the outskirts of the ashram went into the cottage and made known to their master the arrival of the ruler of the empire. Vasishta showered his blessings on him as soon as he saw him near the door, and lovingly inquired about his health and the welfare of his subjects and his kith and kin. Sudakshina fell at the feet of the sage's consort, the famed Arundhati, embodiment of all the virtues which adorn the noblest of women. Arundhati lifted her into her arms and fondly embraced her, prodding her with questions about her welfare. She led her into the inner part of the hermitage. As befitted the monarch of the realm, Dilipa inquired from Vasishta whether the yajnas and yagas, sacrifices the ascetics had to perform as part of the cultural tradition, were being carried out without any handicap, whether the anchorites were experiencing any difficulty in acquiring food and carrying on their studies and spiritual practices, and whether their sylvan campuses were terrorized by any wild beasts. He was yearning, he said, to make their studies and spiritual exercises progress well without any distraction due to adverse environment or counter influences. When the king and queen entered the cottage and sat in their places with the assembled sages and seekers, Vasishta suggested to the latter to move into their own hermitages and asked the king the reason for his coming to his place, accompanied by the queen and none else. The king communicated to his preceptor the nature and depth of his grief, and prayed for the only remedy that could remove it, namely his grace. Listening to that prayer, Vasishtha was lost in deep meditation. Perfect silence prevailed. The king too sat in the lotus posture on the bare floor and merged his mind in God. The queen attuned her mind with the divine. At last, Vasishtha opened his eyes and said, "King, the will of God can be thwarted by no man, whatever his might or authority. I have no power to override the decree of the divine. I cannot manifest enough grace to confer through my blessings the son you desire. You have drawn on yourself a curse. On one occasion, when you were approaching the capital during your journey home, the divine calf, Kamadhenu, was reclining in the cool shade of the divine tree, the Kalpataru. Your eye fell on her, but caught up in the tangle of worldly pleasures, you ignored her and passed on in pride to the palace. Kamadhenu was pained by the neglect. She was hurt that you had failed to honor her. She felt that your people will start dishonoring the cow, since the king himself had failed in his duty. When rulers who do not revere the Vedas or adore Brahmins who learn and practice the Vedas or neglect the cow which sustains man continue to rule without restraint, she argued, there will be no dharma in the land. Kamadhenu cursed you that day that you should have no son to succeed to your throne. She declared, however, that when you take the advice of the Guru and start in humility and reverence to serve the cow and worship her in gratitude, the curse will be rendered infructuous and you will be rewarded with a son. Therefore, worship the cow from this moment with your queen as laid down in the sacred texts, and you are certain to have a son. The hour is near when cows start returning home from the pasture. My treasure, the divine calf Nandini, is fast approaching the hermitage. Go, serve her with devotion and steady faith. Give her food and drink at appropriate hours. Wash the calf and take her out to the pastures and see that no harm comes to her while she grazes. Vasishtha then initiated the king and queen in the ritualistic vow of cow worship. He sent them into the cowshed with holy water and offerings for the worship, and himself walked towards the river for ablutions and evening prayers. One day, while Nandini was gazing happily in the jungle, a lion espied her and followed her in order to allay his hunger. Dilipa observed this. He used all his skill and might to foil the lion from pouncing on her. He resolved to offer his own body in exchange. That lion, though feline and ferocious, was a strict follower of dharma. Moved by compassion at the sacrifice that the king was willing to make to save the cow that he worshipped, it released the cow and the king from its clutches and left the place. Nandini was filled with an inexpressible sense of gratitude and joy at the self-sacrificing gesture of Dilipa. She said, "King, this moment, the curse that afflicts you is lifted. You will have a son who will subdue the whole world, support the principles and practice of dharma, earn renown on earth and in heaven, enhance the fame of the dynasty, and more than all, continue the Ikshwaku line wherein the Lord himself, Narayana, will one day take birth. May this son be born soon." Nandini blessed the king. Attended by the king, the sacred cow returned to the ashram of Vasishtha. Vasishtha had no need to be told. He knew all. As soon as he saw the faces of the king and queen, he surmised that their wish was fulfilled. So, he blessed them and permitted them to leave for the city. Then, Dilipa and Queen Sudakshina prostrated before the sage and reached the palace, full of joy at the happy turn of events. The child grew in the womb as the blessing guaranteed. When the months ran their full course, at an auspicious moment, the son was born. When the happy tidings spread over the city and kingdom, thousands assembled before and around the palace in great joy. The streets were festooned with flags and green leaves. Groups of people danced in glee, calling on all to share in the thrill. They waved camphor flames to mark the occasion. Huge crowds exclaimed, "Jai! Jai!" and moved on towards the palace grounds. Dilipa ordered that the birth of the heir to the empire be announced to the multitude gathered in the vast grounds of the palace by the minister himself. And when he did so, the joyous exclamation of the throng hit the sky. The applause was loud and long. The jais echoed and re-echoed from one street to another. It took many hours for the gathering to disperse and reach home. On the 10th day, the king invited the Guru and celebrated the rite of naming the newborn, Namakaranam. The name Raghu was selected on the basis of the asterism under which he was born. The child gave delight to all by its prattle and play. He was liked by all as a bright and charming youngster. He crossed his teens and became a brave, resolute, efficient helpmate of his father. One night, no one could guess why the king felt so. While conversing with the queen, he said, "Sudakshina, I have achieved many a grand victory. I have succeeded in celebrating many a great ritual sacrifice. I have fought many a grim battle with mighty invaders and triumphed over them all, including even ogres and subhuman titans. We are blessed with a son who is a precious gem. We have nothing more to gain. Let us spend the remainder of our lives in the adoration of God. Raghu is the repository of all virtues. He is fit in all respects to take up the burden of ruling over the empire. Let us entrust the realm on him. We shall retire into the silence of the forest, live on roots and fruits, serve the sages who lead austere lives filled with godly thoughts and Godward aspiration, and sanctify every moment with Shravanam, Mananam and Nididhyasanam, listening to the sacred teachings, meditating on their inner meaning, and practicing the path laid down. We shall not yield for a minute to sloth based on tamasic qualities." So saying, he called the minister to his presence as soon as it was dawn, and he directed that arrangements be made for the coronation and marriage of the prince. Full of the spirit of renunciation, he asked the queen what her plans were. She shed tears of joy and gratitude and said, "What greater good fortune can I gain? I am bound by your order. Proceed your plans." Her enthusiasm and willing acceptance strengthened the resolution of the emperor. Dilipa called together his ministers, scholars, and sages and communicated to them his intention to celebrate the coronation and marriage of his son. They wholeheartedly agreed, and the two functions were held with great pomp. The father then gave the prince valuable advice on administration, emphasizing the need to promote the study of the Vedas and the fostering of scholars learned in Vedic lore, and lay down laws that will promote popular well-being. After this, he moved into the forest with the queen, bent on acquiring the grace of God. Emperor Raghu ruled the kingdom from that day in accordance with the directives given by the Pandits and with the twin objectives, the happiness of his subjects and the promotion of righteous living. He believed that these two are as vital as breath, and he spared no pains in pursuing these ideals and making his ministers to adhere to the path. Though young, he was rich in virtue. However tough a problem happened to be, he grasped it quickly and discovered the means of solving it. He made his subjects happy and contented. Wicked kings were taught severe lessons by him. He won them over by peace approaches and clever diplomatic tactics, or by fielding a little army in order to win them over, or openly breaking with them and defeating them on the field of battle. He was engaged in activities that ensured the welfare of the people and promoted the culture enshrined in the Vedas. All classes of people extolled his rule, irrespective of age, economic status, or attainments. They said he was proving himself superior to his father in physical prowess, courage, righteous conduct, and compassion. Everyone said that he brought lasting significance to the name he bore. Raghu paid special attention to the care and comfort of the hermits engaged in asceticism in the forests. He saw to it that they were saved from harassment and himself supervised the arrangements for ensuring them protection and encouragement. So, he received their blessings and grace in ample measure. End of Part 1, Chapter 2, Sai Ram.
Shri Sita Ram, Sita Ram, Sita Ram, Ram Sita Ram, Sita Ram, Sita Ram. Shri Ram ji ki महिमा अपार, राम जी की महिमा अपार. सुन लो तो बेड़ा अपार, राम जी की महिमा अपार। श्री राम नीरज नयना मुखारविंदा, श्यामल छवि अति सुंदर राम। करुणा स्वरूप श्री राम, निर्मल स्वभाव श्री राम। करुणा स्वरूप निर्मल स्वभाव, भक्तों के प्राण गुणशीलवान। नीरज नयना मुखारविंदा, श्यामल छवि अति सुंदर राम। रविकुल मंडन दशरथ नंदन, मुनि मनरंजन नयन विराम। राम श्री राम श्री राम श्री राम राम श्री राम। श्री राम जी की महिमा अपार, राम जी की महिमा अपार। जय जय श्री राम, जय जय श्री राम, जय जय श्री राम। जिनकी कृपा ने आखर बितारे, एक ही बाण ने दुष्ट संहारे। जिनकी कृपा ने पाथर बितारे, एक ही बाण ने दुष्ट संहारे। चरणों की धूल ने पापी उधारे, जन्मदिन उन्हीं का मना लो आज। जन्मदिन उन्हीं का मना लो आज। मुबारक हो सबको जन्मदिन की रात। रघुपति राघव राजा राम, पतित पावन सीताराम। रघुपति राघव राजा राम, पतित पावन सीताराम। राम सीता राम सीता राम सीता राम, राम सीता राम सीता राम सीता राम। श्री राम जी की महिमा अपार, राम जी की महिमा अपार। सुन लो तो बेड़ा पार। सुन लो तो बेड़ा पार। श्री राम जी की महिमा अपार, राम जी की महिमा अपार। राम सीता राम सीता राम।